they're saying that because, in their opinion, we're not offering a fair living wage, right? Or at least that's what their chosen talking heads have told them they need to be repeating, just like we have our chosen talking heads who tell us what we should be repeating, and talk smack about millennials being lazy, right? So, every generation falls into those stereotypical grumbling points. And we need to start being a part of the solution to breaking those stereotypes about what is a fair wage and can you make a good living in our industry? We all know that the answer is yes. But how do we change the industry reputation? Maddi did some good research and posted it on the meeting announcement for this meeting about what the average technician makes across the country. I was doing a little bit of searching and I found something that was frankly scary. This is on salary.com. And at first I was searching for mechanic because that's what most people think we are in the world, right? And then I adjusted for automotive technician and it actually bumped it up some. So this is automotive technician. This is a table that is national average with adjustment for geographic differential. So adjustment for cost of living based on areas. If you make $50,000 a year as an automotive technician, you are in the 90th percentile. You know what that means? Out of 100, you make more than 90. That is scary. So the 50th percentile on that is $38,671.
Now, is your scale only for mechanics or is that for salary in general?
That's automotive technicians.
So
it's based on HR reported data. So, the skeptics for data like that, and I think it's a justifiable skepticism, are going to say, well, Jiffy Lube employs a lot of people at a very low wage, comparatively speaking, and are all of them going into that data pool? And I know that I don't report what I pay to any HR surveys.
That was actually going to be my question, was you guys who are don't have HR people, you are the HR people, are y'all even represented in that at all?
So
no idea.
That's a valid question. I think we have to consider that, the reality is probably skewed north of that. I hope it's skewed north of that. It should be skewed north of that. But if I'm a 18-year-old kid who's decided that I'm not going to go get, $150,000 of student loan debt so that I have an advanced degree in 18th century French literature, and I want to go into a trade, I don't have a parent that's in a trade. What am I going to do? I'm going to go to Google, search it up, right?
So Mike, do you know if the census has any data on salaries for positions?
I'm looking at Maddi.
I have numbers from 2020 from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Man, those are hard words to put together. $21.18 was the median pay for automotive technicians / mechanics in 2020. A median salary of $44,050 according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics.
So that's basically your 50% is that 44,000, which definitely is a good chunk higher than the other numbers you were looking at from the HR people. So that hopefully is coming from taxes or some more reliable data.
So Rick probably knows a lot about that. You take care of a lot of shops. What's your average shop pay their technicians? Maybe it doesn't.
Rick White, he was asking you, sir.
I'm sorry, say it again, you broke up.
Okay, you take care of a lot of shops. What is your average shop pay their technicians?
It really runs the gamut. I have some shops that are paying $18 an hour, which I think is ludicrous. And I have others that are paying $40 and $50 an hour. It
Is
really
that
depends
per
on the
hour or
area.
Flat rate.
It depends. Most of them are not on flat rate anymore. Some of them are hourly. Some of them have a blended plan. But there's not a lot out there today that are full flat rate anymore, which is kind of refreshing.
I have, sorry to
think if-
interject, but I have another stat that just to round it out, which may help us be more represented in the independent side. So according to the Auto Care Association in their yearly findings, they said a tech's average hourly wages decreased from 2019 to 2020 by 1.7% to a total of $19.44 an hour on average. That is pretty low. So I think what I found is when you average all the findings out, if you go, I did find salary.com. I went from salary.com over to, I used ACA as well as I used Indeed and I used the BLS. I think average about $20 an hour is the average. And, my big finding is that whenever I post anything like that on our social media, I always have comments and that's way too low. That's not right. Well, it's the data that's out there and, the very credible sources. So there is part of it that is accurate.
So part of the difficulty that we're facing is, I can go to the doctor's office when I have a cold, and there's going to be the woman who checks me in. She takes my weight and my blood pressure and my vitals and everything. And then there's going to be the doctor who comes in and does the evaluation. Says, oh, I want to do some blood tests too because you're getting old or whatever. And then I go talk to the phlebotomist who draws the blood, and that's 3 different people making 3 significant different wage points, and they're all medical professionals. So if you come into Carfix, we get Atticus, who Maddi knows, that is an 18-year-old kid out of high school, apprentice, a goofy dude, right? He's an entry-level guy, right? And he's making $14 an hour. Living at home with mom and dad and also delivering pizza at night. That's entry level is by definition. And I've also I just made a job offer for a technician that's going to make $150,000 a year, right? So they're all technicians. So dragging down that average.
That was exactly what I was wondering about the guy that said it ranges from 18 to 50 an hour, because I'm thinking, obviously, the $14 guy is probably barely worth that at this point. He will be worth it as you get him trained and more, hopefully. But the $50 an hour people, I'm assuming, are much more experienced. So there needs to be a way to account for that as well.
It's not so much the experience, it's the area. Okay, the guy that's getting $50 an hour right now is, up in the Hamptons or, in Burlington, Vermont, or something to that effect. So it depends on where they're coming, their cost of living is, and such like that. The $18 an hour tech is a solid BB plus tech. But this is a client of mine called me up 2 weeks ago freaking out because a prior employer went after one of his techs that has been with him a year, offered the guy $5 more an hour and a $5,000 signing bonus. And one of the things that I had a long talk with him about is you can't give incremental raises anymore. You have to give replacement raises. You got to think through, what is this guy going to cost to replace? And that's what he needs to get paid, so that you don't have the opportunity for somebody to take them away.
Doesn't part of the problem come in that we're really painting with a really broad brush? We're counting everybody as a technician all the way from cradle to grave, and we're not speaking about it or measuring it in terms of a surgeon and a general practitioner and so on.
Yeah,
Bill, you're right, but here's the thing. If you, I mean, nothing for nothing, even at 20 bucks an hour, that's 40 grand a year. I don't know about you guys, but maybe it's just because I'm old. I couldn't live on 40 grand a year. You know, I think we've got to start looking at raising it even to get guys interested in coming into this industry. And we've got to be aware that these guys have, I think we should be paying trainees 50, 60 grand a year. And I think good techs should be making 100, 120,000 a year, 150,000 a year.
I'm curious, Mike, the gentleman that you're bringing in, I know you've gone a long ways to grab this guy. What were your interview questions like, and what kind of data did you want or did you receive in order to, you know, confirm that you want to go after this guy?
So this guy, I actually found him because someone on the Auto Vitals group on Facebook posted that there's a high-level technician moving from City X to Raleigh, North Carolina. And I flew him and his wife out to Raleigh the next week and put him up in a hotel and hooked his wife up with a real estate agent to drive around and look at houses. And then he hung out with me for a day and a half between the shops, went to dinner. He logged me into Auto Vitals and showed me the system that he had set up for his shop that he'd been at for 16 years. He showed me their statistics. He showed me some of, you know, the projects that he works on. There was no formalized, you know, here I've got 2 pages of questions. It was, you know, I spent a day and a half with him, and hours with him at both shops. You know, shared dinner with him, met with his wife, you know, got feedback from the real estate agent about what it was like to spend a day with his wife. She didn't know that I'm friends with that agent, right? So, you know, you learn a lot about somebody in that situation. But this dude, he also has, you know, he's got all the alphabet soup letters after his name, right, and all the certifications. And he also has experience being a shop foreman and lead diagnostician on a 15-bay shop. It's a high volume shop. So
what was the number one thing that confirmed that this guy was for you?
The thing that stands out in my mind is there was a time where
Jeffrey, could you mute yourself, Jeffrey?
Thank you, sir. There was a time where in the lobby of the big shop, and a longtime client came on and was like, "Oh, Mike," you know. So I kind of went over and was gabbing with the client, and he was just kind of hanging out. And he filtered over to the door between the lobby and the shop and was looking out in the shop and watching the guys in the shop. And there were 3 or 4 guys that were working together to solve a problem on a car. And he just kind of matriculated out there. And afterwards, he had helped them diagnose an oddball problem while I was talking to the customer, and talked about what a great attitude those guys had working together to help each other. He said that was the most important thing to him, was that wherever he settled, it was a teamwork, help each other atmosphere. And he loves teaching people that are willing to help each other. And I was like, ring it up, brother. So, you know, that was good for me.
Well, what I was trying to get to the point is, you know, I thought a lot about why we are in the position that we're in and why do we have such difficulties. I kind of, you know, Mike, you know me fairly well, and so does Bill and a bunch of others here. But I kind of think that maybe we need to really look at a different way that we do compensate. And I know the title of this thing is called wage, but I think compensation really takes in a bigger picture. And what I try to look at and what would interest me, and I want to pursue it because I'm going to revamp my system at the shop, and it's adequate, but it's not superior. And so looking over the fields of way different industries pay their talent, and let's go away from employees, let's say talent. You can look at your sports folks, right? The athletes, and they're based on performance. Everything is performance based now. So if I, like Mike, this young man was clearly worth what you're going to invest in him. Why? One, he kept track of all of his numbers through Auto Vitals, right? So Bill's here today, and through I'm not going to, I have to single out Auto Vitals because I do use it. Bill's here, but in the background are all of the KPIs on this young man or our technician staff, and that's their calling card, right? Just like if you had, you wanted, like say the Philly went after Bryce Harper, or you go after any high talent, LeBron James, you're going to know his numbers, right? So that's a calling card. And why are we afraid to come up against that in terms of as an owner, right? At some point, that person's going to want to go, hey, I have a change in my life. I'm going to do this, I'll do that. I want to leave. All right. Are we afraid to let them go? Fearing that we're not going to find anybody else. So the model of like finding superstars or hiring superstars or just hiring talent, we have the numbers and we have the metrics now to measure quite precisely how these people are going to work out for us. And I just continue to look at the sports model as the future of how we're going to hire. Because we're not hiring for a job anymore. We're hiring for a career. At least that's what most of us want to do. So why are we singling out an individual with a 10-question interview and our fingers crossed and a bunch of certifications that, you can pencil whip through if you're smart enough? So this is something I'm throwing out. I'm not saying this is the way, but I think there's just a different model out there that we could mimic to build a team, a consistent team. You lose a superstar, hey, there's somebody in the minors that are ready to come up, that kind of thing.
Funny
In
you
the
say that.
past,
Go ahead, Bill.
in the past, we had a tendency when a technician was coming to us, we'd ask him, can you go ahead and show us how many hours you're producing? Now, because of the data we have available, we've got all kinds of other behavioral data that we can actually use to understand what they were doing in a shop environment to go ahead and produce those hours. So, I mean, if somebody comes to you and says, when we talk about a fair market wage, when they come to you and you ask them, what is your fair market wage? And then you can use the data to see if they can go ahead and fit in your particular financial model, and also go ahead and go as far as putting together to them a total compensation package that gets them where they want to be. And now you say, in order to go ahead and get that compensation, here's the things that you're agreeing to do, and here's how we're going to measure it. So, if we use the tools a lot differently than we had in the past and don't focus specifically on how many hours they produce where they're at, but other data besides that, it really goes a long ways. And again, like Greg had said, that we're really defining a career path and a compensation program that goes along with that career.
And to add to that, Bill, it's, from the owner's perspective. So you think about, well, what if I invest all this time and money and all this other, and they decide to leave? Okay, so instead of an employment application, how about if we offer them a personal services contract, similar to what goes on in sports as well? That contract is now leveraged against the employee or the talent, and if it comes down to it, the person who wants to take that talent away from you has to pay up the contract. It's not a burden on the talent, it's the burden on the owner who wants to take them away. And a lot of your sports teams, well, I can tell you, anybody familiar with Herschel Walker? Okay, Herschel Walker, right? Well, go back to '87 with the USFL and Donald Trump. He was the first one to sign a personal contract, not a personal services contract. So he had to ask to be relief when the USFL went down and all that other stuff. But it was, looking at it again, this is something that, we changed the game a little bit. And I really think it's going to be there, but we can protect. And like Bill says, we now have the metrics on talent and how well they perform and build them. And they can't deny it. You're this now. If you're going to get better, okay, now you're worth more. how that goes. It's a market-based system, completely market. So I don't know, just some thoughts.
And with a performance-based contract like that, or with a contract like that, it can also be a minimum performance base also.
Absolutely. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to go with this. I just think that it's more detailed now. And, you know, I don't do a lot of hiring. I mean, my crew is pretty well, you know, stable. But I know there's going to be a time when I need to grow and I'm going to have to find talent, and I want good talent. I don't want them to leave, but if they leave, you know what? It wouldn't be bad if the other owner could, you know what? I want that technician, right? Okay, well, here's what he's worth, right? Here's the contract. You can buy me out if you want, no problem, and take the talent. That's what it's worth. So again, just thinking here out loud.
I got one thing. I have a technician that's been with me for 15 years, and about 10 years ago, well, it'll be 10 years ago this October, I was getting hearings from various people he was going to be leaving. And so I got, you know, started kind of freaking out a little bit because he's the smartest guy, the most talented guy in our shop. And so I talked to financial advisor. Long and short of it, we created a golden handcuffs. He's still there. The big payout is this October, but we're going to re-up it. We're going to actually, my son handles our finance. He works for Merrill Lynch, so he handles all that now, but we're putting together another package for him because he's still pretty young. He's 43, and I don't want him to leave. And I'm, you know, I mean, it's one of those things that's worth it when you stop and think about how much I was putting away every month to pay this off. $709 a month. And to me, it was worth every penny. And so now I'm going to hopefully have a little better. The first guy was just, I don't like what he put us onto, and my son's not a fan of it either. But the next situation is going to be where we're going to be putting money into something that's going to hopefully make some money for us, and then pay him off at the end of 10 years. So it's been good. I mean, he's still there, and yeah, I couldn't imagine not having him there. So that's something to consider. I don't know if anybody else is doing that or not. It's a pretty significant amount of money. It's 100 grand. So that's how much I valued him 10 years ago.
Has anyone thought about phantom stock and profit share on non-voting stock in some way as a way to kind of create golden handcuffs for key employees? They'll continue to, you know, collect dividends when they're taken from the business as long as they're an employee. It's a non-voting stock, right? But, or I guess there are different rules for non-voting and phantom. I need to be educated on that, but my understanding is that it can be structured such that if they leave the company, they lose that stock and the value that it brings. They stay with the company, they continue to collect the dividend.
I've run into some shops that are actually doing that in a different way. They go ahead and have a stock that has a certain value to it, and they go ahead and get the employee vested in that stock, a certain percentage as they go ahead and work for them for a number of years. So it might be 5% 1 year and another 5% the next year, and so on until they actually have it. But it's not a voting type stock. It's just something that has a value assigned to it.
See, here's the problem with that. The way our business works is that at the end of the year, we're trying to find ways to bring our profit down. And we're also trying to find ways to keep our assets low. And so if we had the stock and the guy was watching the numbers, he's going to see that at the end of the year, I'm going to find a way to keep that profit down and the stock low. So it's not going to do much to benefit him on that. If you're going to do profit sharing, you almost have to do it on gross profit, not net profit. Because every shop owner that's making money is trying to get their net profit down in order to avoid the taxes. You know, you buy equipment, you buy stuff, you replace stuff, you buy a new truck, whatever.
It's a consideration for sure. So that might also be one of the things at play that has kept a lot of us from growing at the pace that was possible, because we've thought only in very short-sighted, short term. I don't know the right way to articulate what I'm saying, but I feel like there are big businesses out there that are really big, and they found ways to manage their tax burden without limiting profit. I mean, they've got to show profit at the end of the year to appeal to their shareholders, right? So how are they doing? There's got to be another way to do that, but it's probably a different conversation, right?
Well, I don't know, but our company's turned into a real estate company that fixes cars. We're not really an auto shop anymore.
You've bought and sold several locations over the years, if I recall correctly, right?
I have. Yes, I have.
Hey, Rick,
And
I have a
may
question.
do it again.
I think it's pretty easy math to figure out the revenue value of a technician over the course of a year, right? And to see what the value of that technician is, and therefore what it's worth, or what it should be worth to us to have a quality technician in place. And that's what we can afford to pay them, right? As a percentage of that revenue. So, for me, an average technician is going to turn 40 weeks in a 40 hours in a 40-hour week, right? And that seems reasonable. My target sales per hour is parts and labor sales per hour is 250, right? So 250 times 40 hours is $10,000 of revenue per week per technician average, right? You're going to have some high guys, you're going to have the entry level guys. So that's $500,000 a year in revenue for a technician. So what percentage of that number should we be ready to pay an average reliable technician?
I was taught 15.
So that's $75,000.
Yeah.
So is it not reasonable to post an ad saying $75,000 for a B technician?
Do I think it's possible? Sure it is. Here's the thing. I think we're kind of looking at this backwards. I think what we're doing is we're looking at what we can bring in, or what we're bringing in now, as far as figuring out what we can pay somebody. But I really think we've got to figure it the other way around. In other words, what's it going to cost us to bring somebody in? And then what do we need to charge in order to be able to afford him to come in?
Yeah.
Because I think we've been doing the math backwards.
Well, you better
Does that
believe
make
I had a
sense?
meeting about what our effective labor rate needed to be once this new guy starts with his giant wage.
Well, what Rick said is really spot on, and that's what I said, is to find out from what a prospective employee thinks a fair market wage is, and then decide to go ahead and stay in our same financial model we have. Can we demonstrate the value of what we need to charge to the customer to be able to afford to do that? So like Rick says, we're starting from the wrong end of the deal. We're saying that our customers will only pay this, therefore I can only pay this. And we need to go ahead and flip it around, flip the script completely around backwards.
Yeah, and the other thing too is I have clients that are really up in their game on 4-day work weeks, and they're paying 100% health insurance for them and their families again, and different things like that. I mean, I had one shop owner up in Vermont. We sat down, figured out she needed to increase her labor rate by $7, and she's now paying all the health insurance. And you've got to start looking at this is more than just compensation. It's got to be basically what I call CBCR, which is it's got to be compensation, benefits, conditions, and reputation. Those are the 4 levers I've got to pull to attract and compel somebody to work with me, right, to join the team. So it's looking, I'm looking at, look at, there's no such word as look at. That's one of my verbal tics right now. So the days of working in a shop that's 20 degrees in the wintertime and 130 in the summertime are over. And the reality is right here in Harrisonburg, which we are in Podunk, Virginia, okay, I can go to Target right now and get a job starting at $17 an hour. I've got McDonald's that's offering $15 an hour. So if we're going to show somebody a path, and that's really what we've got to start thinking through, is what I call a PDP, or personal development plan, where we're saying, okay, you're going to come in here, in 6 months you'll be able to do this, in a year you'll be able to do this. This is what you're going to be getting paid. This is what you'll be able to produce. And each and every one of us should have goals and minimum levels of acceptable performance for each position based on experience. But we don't tend to do that. Mike, I got to be honest with you. If I had a tech billing 40 hours a week on a 40-hour week, I'm pissed, because my guys got to grow. That's always the way it was. And, you know, just to give you an idea, when I sold my shop in 2002, but in 2001, I had 2 techs that made 89,000 and one that made 85,000, and my advisor made 90. That's fine. And I did that on a $79 labor rate. And it's fine. It's just, you got to be willing to see what those numbers look like and the kind of performance that you want to get out of them, the kind of work they can do. Because you're absolutely right. If I go to a general practitioner, he's worth X dollars. But if I go to the #1 heart surgeon in the entire country, he is worth significantly more because of the specialization. But as an industry, we've got to stop thinking like the 70s. You know, and that's what we're still doing, unfortunately.
I'm thinking, where does all this money come from? Benefits, this, that, vacation, holidays, sick days. If you're allowed to guy 15%, where's the money come from?
You're charging more. That's what you're doing.
Well, nobody else is, so I'll be pricing myself out of my market.
No, you won't. You'll be doing better work with less comebacks, and you'll have a loyal clientele that appreciates and values what you're doing. And you'll be able to attract people that you couldn't before.
And you'll have better people. Yeah.
And you'll have better people and a better team and less stress and less headaches and more accountable people. Because, I mean, how many of us are babysitting all day long right now because we're not getting the quality people that we want and need?
I can just say that's true in, I think, any industry. I mean, you think about home builders or anything, you know, there's people that want whatever they can get as fast as they can get it, as cheap as they can get it. And then there's the people who take their time and do it right. And it does take longer to do it that way. But I think what you're saying is very true, that ultimately you're building something that will last and can sustain, whereas, you know, the other way doesn't necessarily pan out in the long run.
Absolutely. It's the difference between working every day and trying to survive and setting up a business where you actually become a business owner, where you've got people doing the work for you and you're back there and you're starting, where the business starts to honestly become like a little ATM for you. So you're not in there all the time, but you've got really quality people doing an amazing job. You know, there's a really great book out. It's only like 1,300 words. It's ridiculously short. It's called Message to Garcia, and it's by Albert Hubbard. And it was written at the turn of the century, and they had the same problems back then that we have today. We think that this is new. I'm telling you, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, they still had problems getting dedicated, good people that were willing to put themselves out there and work hard. It's no different than today, but we've got to find the special sauce, and that's going to be different for each person. Because the other thing I think we're doing that's a mistake is we're running our businesses like it's a checker game, like each piece moves the same. We treat them all the same, but it's not. We're playing chess. Every person's got a different motivator and a different drive and different guidelines and expectations. And it's our job to be able to orchestrate the movement of those pieces to get to our desired end result.
I think that's a great analogy. The checker's not chess. It's, to Greg's point, like I just put on there, you know, the quarterback, the wide receiver, you know, they're different skill sets than the lineman, than, you know, the backups, long snapper. you know, so they have different compensation packages at different values.
Absolutely, based on the value that they can bring to the business and to the organization. Look, Tom Brady gets paid. I don't care who you are. You can hate the Patriots and whoever as much as you want. I'm from Boston, so to heck with y'all. But Tom Brady's a heck of a player, right? And he gets paid based on that ability. If I have a tech that has that same kind of ability, I'm like Mike, I'll pay him 150K. I just got to make sure that I'm getting, no, that the to heck with y'all is Boston, Virginia, right? I'm from Boston, but I've been in Virginia now for 16 years, so
So
it's rubbing off.
it's blended.
It's blended, yeah. But
So when-
no, it's just the reality.
So when we've got these higher dollar people that are career people, we want to go ahead and take care of them. And we also need to go ahead and deliver the value. And so instead of having the mindset is we need to go ahead and charge what the market will bear, what we need to do is adjust the market that we're working on to the people that will actually pay based on value, not, treating us like we're a commodity.
Exactly. And we got to be very, very careful about that today, because more and more people are trying to insulate themselves from us and make us more of a commodity. And it makes it very, very difficult where we can show the value, show the differentiation. And let's face it, this is one area where there's a lot of room. So we've got to be really careful about that.
So you're saying we got to be careful or we're going to get put in the same position that the body shops are in where their prices are dictated by somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, that's to an extent. I mean, we just got to make sure we never let the insurance companies in like they did, right? And we've got to be prepared. I was the same way when I started working with extended service contracts and such. Here's my price. Well, we'll pay this much. I said, that's fine. Customer will pay the rest.
Yeah.
I'm fine. I had an insurance company one time tell me, they go, can you give us a cheaper rate? I go, why? Well, we're an insurance company. I said, well, tell you what, when you drop my rate, I'll drop yours.
There you go.
It's just, we got to stop this craziness.
So Mike had talked about a technician, at $150,000 a year. My question is if you had the skills and ability and tools to do it and the mindset to do it, would you really be wanting to work for less than that? If you put yourself in their shoes, it just kind of makes sense. Now we've got to figure out how to build a pay structure and a way to go ahead and deliver that value to the customer where we can charge accordingly.
Well, the reality is, as things tighten up, the average age, one of the things we didn't talk about, but the average age of a technician today is running 48 to 50 years old. Okay, so we're starting to age out. I heard like 3 techs leaving for every 1 tech coming in. So it is a buyer's market, 100%. They own us right now. And until we can start and change things around and start to attract more people into the industry based on the CBCR, right, which is that compensation, benefits, conditions, and reputation, we're sunk. And you're going to see more and more people consolidating, closing down. You're going to see one-man operations that aren't making it, and they're going to go back to being a tech again because they made more money. There's going to be a pretty big shift in the next 5 to 10 years in our industry. It's going to be huge.
What's that shift going to be, Rick?
I think you're going to see a lot of consolidations, and I think there's going to be a lot of bigger players that are going to be coming into the market. I mean, you got what's his name there that bought up Pep Boys and all that. I can't think of his. Icon, Carl Icon.
Carl.
Right, and he's selling some of them off now this year. The ones that aren't performing the way he wants them to, he's getting rid of them. But he wants to have, basically from manufacturer to installation, he wants to have a supply chain all the way through. There's going to be some big players coming in, and honestly, there are so many shops that are operating at a loss that getting them is pretty easy to do.
Yeah, we see more and more multi-shop operations over the last year or two where good operations are going out there and seeking those other locations and putting processes and systems in place and adding them to their group.
Yeah, because at some point you recognize it's a cookie cutter. Once you have that process place and the you know the procedures and the communication and everything documented out well and it flows really good, now you use that team you got, you split them up a little bit, you got 2 shops, and then you build them up for a year or so, and then you split them up, you got 4 shops. I mean, you can go nuts with this right now if you wanted to. It's an exciting time in the industry. I really think there's going to be a lot of change coming down the road, like I said, in the next 5-10 years.
I could literally sell my shop tomorrow if I wanted to. I mean, I've got people wanting to buy it. I've got people calling wanting to buy it. I've got local people who have multiple shops wanting to buy it. So the market's there. If you have a good shop and you don't even have to be profitable. You just have to have a good facility.
You got to have a good location. That's what people are looking for. The demographics, what's being underused. But then it still comes back to, we got to staff it.
I got 22,000 cars a day go by my shop, you know. That's what the people want. They want the traffic.
If I'm looking for another shop, I'm looking for location, first of all, and the fact that they haven't ruined their reputation where I got to leave it closed for a while. And then, you know, I can go ahead and put processes in there after that. So, you know, there's certain things that I'd be looking for, you know, besides just location.
Yeah, there's got to be the potential, right? But it's underused, it's untapped. That's what we're looking for, is that untapped. The guy, look at, see, I said it again. So here's the thing. In life, we're either going to get better or we're going to get bitter. There's a really great book called The Coffee Bean. If you ever read it, it's a really short book by John Gordon, but it's absolutely amazing. It basically says we're all put in this vat of hot water. And some of us are carrots and we get soft and mushy. And then there's others that are hard-boiled eggs. They're eggs and we become hard and really tough. But then there's the coffee bean. The coffee bean doesn't let the water change it changes the water. So what we're looking for is that shop owner that just has given up. He doesn't believe that it can be any better. It's never going to be. And then you come in and you implement the way you're doing things in other locations, and it makes a lot of sense. But every one of us has got a choice as how we react to what's going on around us.
All right, so what's a fair wage?
What's a fair wage? We're talking about an industry that doesn't even give feedback to people. The only feedback they get is a paycheck. What's a fair wage? It's going to be as much as they can possibly get.
It's like saying, what's wrong with the healthcare industry? There's just so many different things that are wrong with it, right?
Right.
So many different, I mean, it's so hard to affect wholesale change in the automotive industry because there are so many. I mean, I know it's not the same all around the country, but in North Carolina, all you got to do to have an auto repair shop is hang a shingle, man. There's no certification. There's no licensure. It's just, you just open up. I'm a mechanic. And so there are enough people that are anchors that are racing to the bottom to try to cheat their way into prosperity that it is like this drag behind us, keeping us from accelerating into where we need to be as a professional field. So I don't know how to, like we said, flip it around from the other direction, like Bill was saying, and come at it from the other side. Because I mean, like my downtown shop, I could advertise to customers based upon the fact that I give full health insurance for employees and family. And we have retirement with company match, and we have a more than fair living wage. And that would attract customers in there because of the demographics where we are. It's a very tight, very high end area, right? But 15 miles away at the Garner shop, if I advertise that, people would run in the other direction because that means you're going to rip me off, you know? And so how do you
it's education. At some point, they're not going to be able to get their car fixed.
Well, and
Yeah.
I was gonna say, you know, what you said about the anchors is true, but I also think there's an image problem. Somebody, I can't remember who, was talking about the career path. My best friend is the career coordinator at Zebulon Middle School, and she has worked very hard to connect with people in the community to show all different kinds of trades. And because everybody's figured out now that A, everybody's not going to go to college, B, everybody can't afford to go to college, and C, if we don't get back to some trades, we're going to all have houses and broken down houses, and broken down cars, and broken down everything else because we don't know how to fix them. So I think that, you know, moving forward, anybody who has an opportunity to get involved with the local education folks that are collaborating with business would be helpful from not only a reputation standpoint, but it could result in a very short number of years in bringing people in that are willing to work and willing to learn that you could train. I mean, that's not the total answer to the everything, but it is something that's tangible that wouldn't be that hard to do and wouldn't take that much money.
And so doesn't a fair wage not only start from defining the career path, but also defining a job description? This is what I'm looking for. Do you fit that mold? Because otherwise we're just basically everybody saying, I just want, you know, an A technician or a diagnostic technician or so on. And we're not really defining what we expect that person to do in that role.
Exactly. And I think that's really important. We've got to have clear-cut goals and minimum levels of acceptable performance for each position. And every person in the shop should have some kind of performance basis to their pay, in my opinion. Because if you think about it, even as an owner, you're on performance-based pay. And I got an owner that'll tell me, no, I pay myself the same every week. And I'm like, yeah, until there's no money in the bank. And then who's holding the check first, right? Well, you're on performance-based pay, Bucko. I'm just telling you, right? So it's understanding that we want to get it so that we have those people that we can motivate, whether it's through extra time off or tool allowance or something that really juices them up, that's going to get them excited about coming. And today we've got to be able to show them a path. We can't, you got kids that are coming out of these schools, going to work for the dealers, and the dealers are shoving them into quick lube bays for 3, 4, 5 years, and they don't want to lose them and they don't want to pay them. And the guys, these young techs, they're not saying the dealer sucks. They're saying the industry sucks and they're leaving. We've got to be able to pay a fair wage. In my opinion, we should be starting off $50,000 to $60,000 a year. We should be providing tools. We should be taking care of health insurance and giving them vacations and, personal time and getting them so they feel like they have a home. But there's expectations that come with that, where I'm not hiring some guy at $50,000 or $60,000 a year. And, maybe I start out at, 4 or 5 hours a day, but I'm not staying there. And that's the national average, is 5 hours a day per tech. And that's terrible, because then you start looking at your effective labor rate and your true cost per billed hour, and it gets scary. You got a tech you're paying $20 an hour to, and he's producing 4 hours a day. That's $40 an hour. Then you got a shop that's got a $100 labor rate, but they got a $65 effective labor rate. Now they're making $20 an hour off of a tech. It's not even 50% of the labor anymore. And that, how many can remember those days? I'm old. So this is a problem. We got to be able to step up. Tools today. Y'all know that they can't deduct the tools anymore from their taxes, right? That happened like 2016, 2017, right in there. So we want them to spend $50,000, $75,000 on tools, and they can't deduct it. It's a big barrier to entry. I think we should have tools, and we should provide the tools for them, and they sign up, they sign responsibility for them, that they use them, but they're shop tools. Talk about golden handcuffs. Where else are they going to go?
Good idea.
We've got to start thinking outside the box, get these guys in here. We got to show them a path. to $150,000 a year. Get them excited about what the potential is. I think every tech should be on their path. And here's the other thing. I was talking to a prospective client one time, and I was going through the list of their team. And he says, I have a C-Tech. And I said, okay, your C-Tech, he does just really basic general stuff. Yeah, okay. How long has he been there? 8 years. And I just about flipped the gasket. How can anybody work at a shop for 8 years and still be a C-Tech? He wouldn't be working for me. One of my values is constant and never-ending improvement. That's now, it was then, it'll be tomorrow. How can we do that? We've got to bring people in that are hungry. But here's the other thing we got to be careful about. We are an industry that hires people for what they can do, and we fire them for who they are. Y'all shaking your head. Mike's got this big smile, like he just ate the canary there. We do. We hire them for what they can do, and then they're absolute cancer to our business, and we have to fire them because of their attitudes, their behaviors, their personalities. So we've got to hire the personality with the ability today. And here's the other thing. Shops are looking for unicorns, and I'm tired of it. You're going to have to grow your own unicorns. You know, we all want that drivability tech, blah, blah, blah. Guess what? He's working somewhere, and you're going to have a pretty compelling offer to get him to do something, to make a move. And then what stops him from moving to the next place? So we've got to start growing our own. We can't, it's that whole everybody thought somebody was going to do it, but nobody did it. And somebody was pissed because nobody did what everybody could, that kind of thing. We got to step up and start mentoring. We've got to start growing our team.
So in the past, shops that were relying on the flat rate system to go ahead and camouflage poor management, they'd, let a technician go ahead and fill up a bay space and do 20 hours a week. Those times are gone. We've got to go ahead and put ourselves in a position of being true business owners and managers, so that way we can go ahead and get these guys at the value level or compensation level that we need to go ahead and continue satisfying the motoring public.
Bill excellently said, I think. The other thing is, we keep waiting as an industry for our team to get better. I need you to understand it's your expectations. You become the catalyst to their growth. It is very, very rare that somebody will grow on their own. You have got to be able to sit down and say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. This is what you'll get. But you've got to create that sense of urgency, that need for growth, that potential, again, by showing them the path, but also setting a standard. Because you need to understand that your culture is what you tolerate. It's not what you talk about. And you've got to step up and you've got to say, no, this is where we're at. This is the quality we're going to bring to the table. This is the level of experience we're going to bring to the table for our clients. And it's nothing else. And everybody has to buy into it. And if you have that destination people are excited about and you hold them to it, it's amazing what can happen. Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox now.
When we talk about compensation, do we also need to take into consideration that in the past, we have assumed that everybody's motivated by money, and we don't really take the time to go ahead and ask these people, what is it that goes ahead and makes them happy in their job?
Yeah, Bill, you're absolutely right. Because most of us are motivated by money, right? And I had 2 techs, and I just had to flip a couple of green things in front of them, and they were all on, right? They were like a dog at the racetrack. But I had another guy, once he hit a certain amount of money, wasn't worth the return on effort for him. But all you got to do is watch where they spend their free time or in what they spend their money on, and you will find what motivates them. For him, it was hunting and fishing. So I set a monthly goal up for build hours for him and gave him a day off with pay the following month, either a Monday or a Friday, to give him a long weekend to go hunting or fishing. And his numbers doubled in 1 month. All we got to do is figure out what that lever is for each person.
Very clever.
Once in a while, not often, Sherry, but once in a while.
You mentioned some books. Can I bother you for the authors? Message to Garcia is from Hubbard,
Elbert Hubbard, yes.
and Coffee Bean from John who?
John Gordon, Jon Gordon. He also wrote The Energy Bus, excellent book.
Easy, you're killing my Audible credits.
Required reading for my clients. The Energy Bus is required reading.
But
Yes,
see,
he is different from L. Ron Hubbard. Yes.
you have an expectation of your clients that you give them reading and they will do it. So, I mean, that's just a perfect example of, I was thinking at from a teaching perspective, because that's what I did before this, but you know, they will generally rise to the level of the expectation. But if they're at it, they're not going anywhere.
If there's no expectation, there's nothing to do. It's SSDD.
Right. And even when they need it, then it's okay. This is great. Let's celebrate that. And then we set our next goal.
Right. Because goals are nothing but mile markers, right? It's a journey. And how many of you have ever seen a goal achieved and then been disappointed 2 days later because you thought it was going to be life changing and it really wasn't? Right. I warn my clients all the time, set the goal, but understand about 75, 80%, when you're about 80% there, we're going to set a new goal, right? Because we want to celebrate that goal and then grow off the next one. That's what we got. It's just constant, never ending improvement. And we can't, as owners, we got to see our business as an organism. It's made up of a number of different cells. One cell cannot grow in this shop and expect it to go where it's supposed to go. Every cell in that organism, i.e. people, have to grow in order for the organism to grow properly.
That sounds kind of like what I talk about all the time, is that I have all the staff members, they're working on only 1 or 2 KPIs at a time. And then every time they go ahead and bust that goal, I tell them that I'm going to be the evil referee. I'm going to move the goalpost a little bit farther till you can't break it anymore. And then we're going to start working on something else. So everybody's got 1 or 2 things they're working on and a way to measure it. And we just keep working the whole staff forward until we squeeze every amount of energy out of that particular staff.
And they feel great doing it because they see progress in themselves. They see themselves become the best version of who they're capable of being today. And guess what? Tomorrow they can be better. And the day after they can be better. That's the beauty of life. But we're not stepping up as owners and having that expectation, that standard that says this is what happens at our shop.
I do think what he said about the 1 or 2 at a time, you know, I think you have to know where you are, understand where you are right now, and that you can't do everything all at one time. So you have to pick, you know, 1 or 2 areas, figure out where you want the basement or the first floor to be on those, get to that place in those areas, and then reassess again. So, because I know sometimes people get overwhelmed, and I can't even imagine. I run my own business, and that's all I can handle. I can't even imagine the complicated, you know, having all these people working for you. So, but you know, you got me inspired. And that's the way the people I work with are. They're always learning. They're always training. They're always giving you books to read. And you're right. If I'm on my own without that, I wouldn't necessarily do it. I would do some of it, but I wouldn't do as much. So you're absolutely right about lead from the front.
Absolutely. And one of the things I talk about all the time is what I call the accountability mirror. And this is kind of interesting. If Mike Allen says, hey, Rick, I'll do this, I'm judging Mike on the performance of that task. So that's accountability. But when it comes to me, I hold myself accountable to my intentions, not my actions. And that's a big mistake we all make. Oh, I meant to do it today. It's okay. I was really busy. I'll do it tomorrow. How many times have you heard yourself say that to yourself? That's got to go away. You want to get a real change going in the shop, you need to have that accountability mirror going both ways. You're going to hold yourself to your actions, and you're going to hold them to their actions.
And that's not a problem in a lot of shops, because I don't know about you, but my staff would normally let me know really quick if I wasn't holding myself up to the goals I set for them. The other thing we'd like to do is when we're setting these goals with people, we'd like to go ahead and make them, you know, a short, obtainable goal that they got to go ahead and push for. And the reason why we do that and keep resetting is we want to keep them constantly having some wins along the way, so they've got that constant feel good about it. So to go ahead and share a big, hairy goal about where you want to be 10 years from now, that really doesn't do justice. You know, that short goals and, you know, a way to measure them and keep them engaged by letting them have them small wins along the way. That's what seems to get staff growing and improving the best.
Absolutely. You've got to get them to want to do what you want for their reasons. That's ultimately what we've got to do to keep people. And in order to do that, I also believe you should help them set personal goals. So when I'm working with clients, we set 2 or 3 business goals. We set a couple, 3 personal goals, and they're not huge, but they're moving them forward. You know, and a lot of times you talk to a tech or somebody and you say, what's your goal? And they go, huh? They don't know what a goal is. So, hey, man, what do you want to see yourself in 90 days or a year? What do you see yourself in 5 years? What's your dream? You got to start talking in their language so you get to see what they see, what they want.
And I would venture to guess, if you do ask that tech a question, that particular tech that goes, huh? And I imagine there's more than one. That's going to be an intangible that's going to tie them to your shop. In other words, they're going to be less likely to go with the stranger, for lack of a better word, when you've invested that time in them as a mentor.
Absolutely. You know, they say, you know, Gallup did a study and they said that when somebody has a best friend at work, they're 7 times more likely to stay. And I said that in a class, and some wise guy, he must have been from Massachusetts, said, I'll hire them both. And I laughed and I said, well, what if the friend is the owner?
There you go.
Right? Because today we need to be mentors. We need to be friends. We need to, the whole dynamic is changing, and we need to be able to change with it. They got to see that we're invested in them. They got to see we've got their back. They got to be allowed to make mistakes. They've got to be in a safe place where they're doing their best every day, learning something new. And because they're learning something new, they're going to make mistakes. We got to allow that. So again, I just think the whole dynamic, this is bigger than just compensation. It's definitely compensation is part of it to attract them. But again, it's the conditions, it's the benefits, it's the environment that we set up, right? And your behavior, the behaviors that you accept equals your environment. So how many of you have rules of engagement for your team? These are the rules, these are the values that we will treat each other by. How many have them spelled out and have gone over them and continue to go over them, and then isolate different areas where somebody's stepping up and demonstrating it and congratulating them for it in front of the team? Okay, now I'm really going to shut up.
So if I'm looking for a technician to go ahead and have as a long-term player, I might be going ahead and we know that so many technicians leave to go ahead and open their own shop. Maybe I should be looking for the technician that wants to do that and bringing them in as a mentor and say, look, you want your own shop? Tell me how many years from now, let me get you in here and let you teach you how to do it profitably. And they might go out and they might get their own shop, or they might just decide that, hey, now that I know how to do all these pieces of it, I don't really want to do that. I'll just stay working here forever. So, you know, it's just a different mindset.
Absolutely. Because the days of thinking people are going to stay with us forever, I hope is long gone.
You know, I can go into a shop, and I go into my shop every morning, and I go around and I talk to the mechanics, and I look at what they're doing and ask them how their evening was or whatever, or maybe talk about the ball game. But I can go into other shops and they're just angry shops. You can just tell. And I don't I don't want to work in an environment like that. It's not that I do it falsely. I don't want to work in a hostile environment. I want to go in, say hello, go to my office, get a cup of coffee, see what's on the news, look at the reports, just have a nice day. I won't let myself get stressed over anything. I don't.
Take a
I
nap.
mean, that doesn't solve anything,
No, you're right. And, the reality is it should be fun. We're with the people we work with more than we are anybody else. And it should be fun. It should be challenging. It should be growth oriented. It should be exciting. And there should be a destination that gets people interested. And, something that makes a difference. Maybe it's Habitat for Humanity. Maybe it's the, ASPCA, or I don't know, but something where the team can get behind and really do some amazing things above and beyond just the work today. Because for the millennials and stuff, having a bigger impact than just a paycheck is really important.
Yeah, I bet Greg could probably talk about the power of a positive culture in the shop a little bit, couldn't you?
Power of a positive
Culture.
positive what, Bill? Culture?
The power of the positive culture in a shop.
Oh yeah, I think it's very important. I mean, it's one of the things as shop owners you have to have. I mean, as Mike was just saying about, he can walk into a shop and he can feel an angry shop. You can. I mean, you can feel if the culture's good or bad. And that's what you want to avoid. That's just
Yeah,
cancer.
and when you get our age, you don't need that anymore. I mean,
You
you never
don't.
needed it to begin with, but
It's
don't
funny that
wanna-
you say that, because I mean, I'm trying to move a third generation into the management side of things. And I tell them, look, the numbers are important, but you got to be able to feel the room. It's like anything else. And you got to talk to the people, you got to talk to your team, and I'll do the same thing. I go in the morning and say, how you doing? And, say hello. And if I'm there when they close, I say goodbye and all that stuff. And Fridays, thanks for a great week. And that's really difficult to kind of, have them understand the importance of that.
But they can sense it if it's phony. I mean, it's got to be real.
But when it comes to recruiting and retraining staff, that is a part of the compensation program that people don't really think about. But more staff is going to leave shops because of a poor attitude in the shop than they are for money or anything else.
Yeah, and the other thing you got to realize as a shop owner, you're the one with the power. So you have to limit that. People, just like if I want to have a cup of coffee with one of the guys and just talk about a ball game, you're not on an equal basis there, and you got to put yourself on an equal basis on that. It's all in the culture, Well, that's not true either. It's just, it has to be real. It can't be faked.
You can't be fake about it.
And if you got somebody with a problem, you got to call them in. You let them know it's a problem. You want to know what the problem is. And if you can't solve the problem, you can't keep the problem.
Right.
I used to say every successful shop had one thing in common, and that one thing in common was an employee with a bad attitude that was good. You got to
The toughest person you'll ever get rid of.
Yeah.
Right? Is a great performer that is absolute poison to the shop.
Oh, and you're so happy immediately after you do it. It's such a relief.
You really are. And what happens is you end up in a situation where the rest of your staff comes and goes, what the hell took you so long? It's pretty amazing
right now. It's like,
yeah. We've all had that cancer in the shop, I think, at some point or the other, right?
Yeah, and it's like the air changes when they're gone.
Oh yeah.
The air gets lighter. And
you start asking yourself what took you so long, because you've got anxiety from what's going to happen if I get rid of this guy. And the first day that he's gone, you're like, well, that wasn't so bad at all. I wish I would have done that 6 weeks ago.
Right.
So
guys,
Is the path to
sorry, I've
dividing
got
a,
boogie.
is the path to dividing a fair market wage, first of all, defining a career path and then defining some job descriptions?
Job
Guys, I
description.
gotta go too. So anyway, it's been a great meeting. It's been one of the best.
Guys, take care. I'm sorry for taking so much of the time tonight. Have a good night.
Good to
Hope
see you,
it's
Rick.
helped. You too, Mike. Take care.
See you, Rick.
Yeah.
Steve,
Thanks, everybody.
take care.
Yep.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everybody, for joining us.
Good night.
Thanks, bye.
Bye, Maddie.